We're here up the Afton Valley with the reservoir in the background, Craig Brannoch or Stuyamra on one side of me, and Cannock Hill on the other. We've come round from Black Craig and the Black Lorg and the Green Lorg, but visibility not great today, weather not wonderful either, so we've come to the foot of these hills, Cannock Hill, just to record our message this morning. So Psalm 23 I'm turning to, well known I think probably to most of us. Psalm 23 reads like this: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." We do look to God to bless his word this morning. So Psalm 23, probably the best known of all the Psalms, and possibly even one of the best known of all of the chapters in the Bible. It has to do, of course, with David, the most important king that the nation of Israel had in their history. And he speaks here of one who is his shepherd, and that's very interesting, of course, because David himself was a shepherd, so David is speaking about a shepherd's shepherd. And as you go through the Bible, you'll often find that shepherds are quite remarkable individuals. You'll find, for example, that one of the great prophets of the Bible, Amos, he was a shepherd. You'll find too that one of the great kings of the Bible, David himself, of course, was also a shepherd. And even Moses, that led the nation of Israel out of Egypt, he was a shepherd, and he also, interestingly, was a priest. And so shepherds in the Bible seem to have a highlighter through them, in a sense, just to draw our attention to them, that there's something important about the shepherd. And of course, David really brings us to what is so important about the shepherd, that the shepherd character is the character of our God. And you would as you come into the New Testament, that becomes crystal clear. If there was any ambiguity, you could turn to John chapter 10 and you would find there the Lord Jesus Christ presents himself as the Good Shepherd who gives his life for the sheep. Well, David trusts this shepherd. David is investing in this shepherd. David is looking forward to forever because of this shepherd. "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Forever is a very long time, and to commit our life to the God of heaven, to commit our life to this shepherd, is a very great commitment. But David does it with his eyes totally wide open. He's utterly clear that and confident that the God that he knows now and the God that he trusts now is one that will see him through. And he knows that because he's had a personal living experience of that same shepherd. In other words, for him, heaven is not really a surprise. It's the end point of a journey. It's what you would anticipate and expect as you go up some of these hills round about me that we've been up this afternoon, Black Lorg and Green Lorg and so forth, that with every step you're aware that there is a strain and tension in your tissues and in your tendons, and you can feel it in your muscles, and you know that you're going higher and higher with every single step. And so it comes as no surprise that ultimately you reach the top, because you've been feeling it with every step that you're getting a little closer to the heavens as the clouds come lower and perhaps the sun at times shines a little brighter. Well, David had that experience. He could feel it in his tissues and his tendons and his muscles, that with every step he was getting a little closer to heaven. And he knew that because the God of heaven, the Good Shepherd of heaven, was with him right the way through. He knew the presence of that same shepherd. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He knew the presence, and he knew the provision of that shepherd. The shepherd was with him and would lead him into green pastures beside these still waters. He knew the refreshment and the provision at the hand of that God. And so the promises of God could be trusted, because day by day he'd been enjoying the fellowship, the communion, the relationship with that same God and that same shepherd, and he was following to what could be anticipated as a reasonable and logical conclusion. Heaven isn't wishful thinking for Christians. Heaven isn't plucking ideas out of the sky, but it's a reasonable and a rational conclusion to what we have already presently experienced. And for David, that was exactly the case. Now, there's a very interesting little verse right in the middle of this wonderful psalm that in a sense is almost out of place. It's almost a New Testament verse in an Old Testament psalm. And verse 3 says, "He restores my soul, he leads me in the paths of righteousness." David knew that God was providing for him. He knew that the God of heaven was present with him. He was his shepherd. But he knew that because of something that had happened to him. And that old translation that I'm reading from, "He restores my soul," it kind of obscures something that's really important. That word restores literally means converts or changes. He takes me on a different path. He restores my soul. David, you see, had what we might call in New Testament terms a conversion type experience. He had come to a point in his life where he chose to and he actively trusted the God of heaven. He knew that the law of the Lord was right, converting the soul. He knew that the law was a law that convicted him of sin, and he knew too that there was a God who was able not to impute sin. You'll read about that elsewhere in the Psalms. He was a man who had come to a knowledge of what he was. He had an open confession of what he was. He knew that there was failure and sin in his heart, and he knew that there was a tremendous blessing from the good shepherd, the great shepherd, the God of heaven, who would not impute iniquity, and he trusted in that God. In the New Testament, of course, we get a fuller and greater picture, I would say, of that shepherd. We find him in the person of the Lord Jesus, John 10, he's the good shepherd. You'll find him as the great shepherd as well, and the chief shepherd. Peter speaks about that as well. You'll find a shepherd who pays the price for sin, who gives himself for his sheep. He's a good shepherd who giveth his life for his sheep. I wonder if you know him. And if we know him like David knew him, then we too can anticipate and expect heaven, not as a wishful or hopeful thing, but as the reasonable and logical end of a journey that we have known his presence and his provision day by day.